when we say that the Moors were expelled from Spain, we're talking about a specific group of people who were put into a system of subjugation, right? Now, when you expel somebody, what are you doing to them? Yes. That's a layman way of saying it. Because expelling is a verb, correct? And more is a verbs, correct? So when you expel something, right, another way is saying kicking them out. But when you kick them out, what are you doing? It's when you forcibly eject somebody, right? Remove it. Well, banishing means that you can't come back. The Moors were expelled, but they never said that the Moors was banished, did they? They said that they was expelled. So that means that they was kicked out for a certain amount of time. Also, when you expel somebody, you are also depriving them, right? You're depriving them of something that they once had, correct? Now, to banish, like I said, means to totally get rid of. You can never come back. But be to expel, before you get expelled, you usually get suspended. So the suspension in Granada and all that started around 1491 is when everything started going crazy over there. But this is a famous depiction of Columbus allegedly coming to America. Who you see with him though? Nice. Exactly. Exactly. You see Moors with him, right? This Moor right here look like he leading the rest of them behind this dude, right? So when we say M-U-U-R, Moor, we're talking about Moors coming from the Babylonian aspect of the term Amaru. Moors, M-O-O-R, is coming then from the acceptance of the Confederation. Also, that's representing Moors from over there in typically Spain. M-O-H-R, Moors. Those are Moors coming out of Germany, Denmark. M-O-R-O, Moors, Moros. Matter of fact, there's a good book you could check out on that called gets into how the Moors left Spain after the expulsion and went all over the world, but then a lot of them went into what became the Philippines and set up their own society and system, basically like the Maroons did. And then the white man went up in there and did what he was doing. That whole thing in the Philippines with MacArthur and all of that was about the further extermination of them because they had to work with the Spanish to do that. Remember, the Spanish pursued the Moors everywhere that they went. Also, to show and prove, everybody's like, well, what's the connection to the Moors in America? There is no connection. The Moors from America was, over here as Indians or whatever you want to call them. And then the foreign Moors came over here and did whatever, right? That's the story. But if that's the case, then why when these people got kicked out of Spain, why would they come to America? Why didn't they just go to Africa if that's where the Moors was from? And if so, how come none of the Africans or Moors or whatever came and dealt with them. Well, this is an old book. Sister Dina sent me a copy. Sent me the cover of it. The Discovery of America, which was an outgrowth of the conquest of the Moors by the Spaniards. You dig? So that's it, man. So basically, when Spain fell, the Moors over here who were connected to that fell as well. And when the Moors over there got deposed or expelled or whatever, part of the capitulation was that they had to share the energy or share the knowledge of the Moors and the empire over here. Ain't that what they did? Exactly. So now this is a book written by the white man. All right. This is a book that was out before we all was alive. This is a book that they was out there pumping in the library and stuff in the school when we was cutting out. Here go another one. Exactly. Because everybody in the 1800s knew that the Moors over here was part of the reason why Columbus came over here. Everybody knew that. Except the Negro slaves that had been put under the jurisdiction. So ask yourself, why is it so horrible for you to identify with any so-called Black or African culture? Why is it so distinctly dicey when you put a fez on or something like that, or start building, or subscribe to the empire? Mm. Why would anybody be upset with that? Here go another one. No. Right. But remember, all these Negroes, all these Washingtons and these people is out here telling you that didn't exist. But right here, they equate the Nanticoke with the Moors, right? So here we are. We see that a book was written in 1883 that basically says that the discovery of America was an outgrowth of the conquest of the Moors. So how then could we not be involved with that on this side of the hemisphere if we was the ones that brought them over here based on the capitulation? Somebody lying, right? So if they wasn't here like that, right? So when I see people dressed like this, so when you see Cherokees dressed like this specifically, hold on, with turbans and shit, like, what am I supposed to see that as? Didn't they say that the Moors of Granada, specifically of the Almohad and the and some of the Almoravid, didn't they say that their features were somewhat fairer than the so-called traditional Africans in some of the reports we read? Now, these are paintings of Moors in America. Indeed so. So as a national identity, it's up to us to find out where the remnants of that national character is, where they exist. If we don't know them, if we don't know each other when we see each other, now that's what I'm trying to say. Like, this allegedly was Prince Whipple. Then we see a picture of James Armistead with Washington in the same pose. Who is quoted in history as an American spy. Nah, I didn't see that, fam. I gotta go in and check that. That's hard. That's like the Easter Island joints. Now, we talk about the Moors of who the Moors fell to. And we said that they fell to the Spaniards, right? When we talk about the fall of the Roman state, we're talking about how Rome fell to the so-called wild Germanians, who they call Visigoths and this, and that, right? Now, historically speaking, when we're talking about what was happening over in Spain in 1492, let's say in the 1300s and all of that, the history of the 1300s, 1200s, stuff like that over here in America is still somewhat nebulous. They talk to you about Native American tribes and stuff, but again, we're talking about people who lived and died out over a succession of a century. Century is 100 years. So whatever people that was in a certain area in the beginning of the century may not necessarily be those people who were in that area towards the end, right? Now, before the Moriscos were in that position of adopting and doing a thing, they actually was under that. They actually was down, and there was actually a succession of rebellion against the Moriscos, against the so-called Spaniards, which culminated into a lot of them becoming what's called conversos, in which they practiced Moorish science and Moorish culture in secret, while did the bidding of the King of Spain and Navarre in them type of places. Now, all of this is running analogous to the Holy Roman Empire. But what this is doing is weakening the Holy Roman Empire's hold over Europe due to the fact that the HRE had direct positive relationships with the Moors, specifically, especially in Britain during the Hanoverian period in the 1600s. So basically, what was going down was that with Constantinople still being in effect, that aspect of the Eastern Roman Empire was still functioning, while the Western Empire was going through all this successive decline. What that meant for us over here was that a lot of the seafaring connections that nations like the so-called Washita and those Mississippi Mound cultures were dealing with and exhibiting, a lot of those trade routes and stuff started to get snuffed out. So most of the rulers at the time that we're talking about when we're dealing with the Holy Roman Emperors was all Moors, as you can see. This again is King Boris, king of Bulgaria. You know what I mean? Which Bulgaria actually in ancient times was part of a place called Bactria, and Bactria was set up by Clytus of Niger, who was the Moor under Alexander the Great. So as you can see, the empire, in terms of the Holy Roman Empire of Moors, from the time of Charlemagne on, was basically a loosely fitted conglomeration of pseudo-Christian states that allied themselves to a holy emperor, who himself was under the jurisdiction of God, right? So at this time, the so-called white people that exist in Europe are predominantly the descendants of those so-called Neanderthals that was put up there during the times of Moses, or let's say before the times of Moses. So they are basically just used as wild cannon fodder, the same way you would use like a lion in the gladiatory pit or something like that. You know what I'm saying? So the historical aspect of the national character of us as a people had to basically be redefined into something that could be arguably reconstrued based upon the continuance of the Christian side of the family working with these Caucasians, and in turn mating with Caucasian females, aka Patagonian blondes, that was raised up through the heritage culture that existed in these Western powers. That's why over here you would hear stories about white women being kidnapped or used as money to pay for stuff by white men. White men would come and sell white women to whoever the chief was or whatever here in America to get provisions and things like that. Or the white woman would always be kidnapped and she would be brought to the tribe or whatever and then be re-educated. This was a customary thing. See them presenting the four heads to the king of Sardinia. Mm-hmm. You see what I'm saying? See, this is a black man. As you can see, he's notably lighter than the heads that are being brought to him. But these are the heads again of kings. We was just talking about Bamberg. Saint Otto of Bamberg was the medieval German bishop and missionary who was the papal legate converted much of Pomerania to Christianity. He entered into the service of the Emperor Henry VI and was appointed Chancellor of the Holy Roman Empire in 1111. Now remember, these Moors were also Normans, and remember we spoke about the aspect of the Normans, which we'll go over again. Okay, so when we talk about Europeans, going to sleep at 10. Oh, go ahead. He's all right until 10. 10 I'll have him. You know what I'm saying? Look at the cliff relief of King Shapur, who was one of the ancient kings of the so-called empire. Right. Nor means light. This is Sancho the First, who was the king of Pamplona and was the one who helped break the Emirates of Cordoba, which led to the eventual capitulation of Boabdil at Granada. Sancho I, who was the king of Portugal, he was the second and was survived by his wife. Sancho succeeded his father and then took the title King of Sicily. So after they all consolidated the new Spanish Empire, reconsolidated the Moorish Empire as the Spanish Empire, this became the herald of it. So the Kingdom of Sicily, which is under Sancho, was represented right here. Castile and Leon, which is Isabel and Ferdinand, was represented here. See what I'm saying? The Count of Burgundy and Bamberg was the dude I showed you earlier, was right here. Hungary, Austria, which is the Holy Roman Empire, the seat of it. The hanging pig represents the power over the devil. And then the Kingdom of Granada. But as you can see, it's all within the double-headed eagle of the Holy Empire itself to show you that it was still a part of it and it was becoming a part of it, which then proves then that the Moorish Empire and the Holy Roman Empire was in union. Everybody understand? And both of those, when we talk about the Moorish Empire, we're talking about us as, again, a unified people all over the world that are consolidating around an identity that we confer or understand as Moor or Moorish. We define the Asiatic race, in a sense, was defined. Okay, let me go back over. This dude right here, Sancho the First, is the king of Italy. Became the king of Italy. He's the one who basically worked to fight against the Moors, who are traditional Moors in Granada. He was more Christian, right? This dude right here. This coat of arms represents the union of those descendants of the Moors who became known as Spanish, right? And Eastern European, and reconsolidated it. But in order for them to maintain their nobility, they still needed to symbolize themselves being part of the Holy Roman Empire. Because not everybody in the Holy Roman Empire was against the Moors. Like, if you look at it, this is all of Europe. Not everybody, every one of these joints was a part of the empire, but not everyone was down with what was going on with it. So to show consolidation as an imperious rex, the subdivisions or the smaller kingdoms would show unification with the empire, even though they may be at war with elements of it. So this right here is an image to represent the faction that was becoming part of what was called the Spanish Empire, which was a reconstituted version of the Moorish Empire, basically a Christian version of the Moorish Empire in Spain. Right, exactly. So here go the Kingdom of Sicily. That was the dude Sancho I showed you. This is what he ruled. Isabel and Ferdinand ruled Castile and Leon. The County of Burgundy. See what I'm saying? Austria, Hungary, the Duchy of Burgundy. Excuse me. Yeah, Burgundy, the Duchy of Brabant, Kingdom of Navarre, Kingdom of Granada. Because Granada became part of the Kingdom of Castile, but was still allowed to have Morisco or Moorish princes. So this shows you that they was all united. See the Gucci G's, the Chanel S, the Chanel C's. Represent the link in the chain. Stop it. But they still needed to show that they down with the whole empire, so the whole empire don't go against them. So they put the double-headed eagle on top. The same way we will have it over here. Only thing, we have one eagle, we have one head. This is them after the Moors started getting expelled and going into other kingdoms as conversos, and then becoming like ministers and chancellors and governors and stuff, maintaining Moorish habit, but not necessarily being able to be a part of the general empire, having a whole nation of people behind you as that. Because after the expulsion, Mulay Ismail moved everything down into what was then Songhai in North Africa, and then pushed everybody that was in Songhai out, set up the Kingdom of Morocco, and then set up diplomatic relations with Britain that sought peace with them through Spain. Right. Because the Habsburg was the head of the Holy Roman Empire. See what I'm saying? The symbol of the Habsburg is the fleur de lis, which then brings Gaul and France into Gaul into it. Gaul is actually France and Germany. In your room,
I want to tell you something really quickly. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles come out in this August.
Okay, great.
And can we go see it?
Not if you don't stop coming out and interrupting the class.
It's the movie.
Yes. You understand? This was also the symbol of the Washita. See the W? When you read the book Return of the Ancient Ones, it talks about how the Washita mariners used to travel back and forth from France through the Louisiana River out into the Atlantic. It's also Quebec. It's also the flag of the Saints in where? Louisiana, right? So if white people were ruling Europe at the time, and we were really against white Europeans at the time, then why were all of the coats of arms people that look like this? The power of the emperor was limited. And while various Franciscan Moorish princes, lords, kings of the empire were vassals and subjects who owed the emperor their allegiance, they also possessed an extent of privileges that gave them de facto sovereignty. From August 1804 until August 1806, the dissolution, the lands directly ruled by Emperor Francis II, the Holy Roman Emperor, newly created Austrian Empire, ruled by the Kaisers and the Tsars, from the Moorish titles Kasbah and Tsar, which means star. The last being the Archduke Ferdinand, who represented the last of the original Moorish bloodlines now bleached out. His death led to the start of World War I, which then created the state, broke up the Holy Roman Empire and all of that, and then created the vassal corporate states of Bosnia Herzegovina. So you're ill and you're bay, like this in Germany. Like, why would they have an Autochthon mall in the same stance as a indigenous European mall? This is again showing the union between the Holy Roman Empire and the Moors of the Maghreb. Again, Why would that be over there? And if it was an Indian, why didn't they make it look red or make it look like a white man? This is Henry the First, Duke of Bavaria, the one to incorporate the double-headed crows. Because the version of Christianity they were dealing with was like an Axumite version. The first Obama really in history like that was Militatis. The Morisco, who was called the father of the Christians, Pope Saint Militatis or Michaelis, the second black pope, served from 311 AD until 314 as the 32nd pope, 32nd degree. Militatis faithful should fast on Sunday on the fifth day of the week because this was the custom of the pagans. After taking office, Militatis persecuted the Christians until the Emperor Galerius, to the end of the persecutions, allowed the Christians to emerge from the underground caves. Pope Militatis convinced the Emperor Maxentius to return all the church buildings and possessions confiscated during the persecutions. What makes him significant is that he was the Pope who presided over Constantine's Council of Nicaea, which basically brought the white Christian its own religion and was brought in somewhat into the human family by having an image graven within themselves. So this repression or this existence, this is what leads me to see that the so-called Spanish people in our communities or the Spanish community is the direct descendant of these Morisco Christians, aka ancient Romans, who fell to the ones that they raised up as slaves and interbred with. You see what I'm saying? Like people from Puerto Rico don't necessarily get the same, like people from Italy think that they look at them like slaves. You see what I'm saying? And Sicily and stuff like that look at them as something totally different. They don't look at them as on par as that, when really they all descend from them. See, this is them now after the wars of fighting us. They now coming back to take back their castles, and the white people who was set to protect them is now keeping them out. And so through the 30 Years War, the 100-Year War, the Armenian War, the Crimean War, the Black Plague, all of this raised up the people who was at the bottom, the serfs and all of that. And eventually, due to the ones that was raised and brought up into the families of these Moors, they then fell into power and then ceased to recognize the real Moors as ancient landowners. See how they flipped it? This is Mehmed II breaking into Constantinople. See the green and the red flag, right? You always see the green and the red flag together. That represents the empire. Anybody see those pictures that the Moors posted with them sitting in the court recently on Facebook? Okay, for those that didn't, some Moors from one of the temples, incorporated temples, I believe, uh, took a Facebook photo of them in in court, but actually like in court, like running the court. Did anybody notice any those people who did see it? Did anybody notice anything interesting about it though, other than the accomplishment of them being there, which we definitely want to give, but from another perspective? Sometimes things be so subtle that you don't really do the knowledge, you know what I'm saying, to how subtle they really be. Yeah, if somebody, if you can, because I don't have it. I just saw it. And what's interesting about it though is that when you're doing stuff like that, you got to look at the flags. Your capacity is what you exist in at the moment that you're in it. So the capacity is then denoted by whoever's presiding as well as what flags are present. I saw the state flag and I saw the American banner flag with or without the fringe. I couldn't tell. But I did not see the imperial flag or the Confederate flag, which then led me to assume then, based on the law of the flag and the law of nations, then that the brothers were then, it could be seen that the brothers were then presiding as in the capacity of the United States, not in the capacity of nobles of the empire. Because the flags would then have to reflect that, correct? In situations like that, it can be perceived one way, but it could also be perceived as the other. Whereas when the flag is actually present, there's no argument. So if you're presiding in the capacity of administrating business for the United States, then I understand the United States flag and the corporate state flag being present. But if you're telling me that you're there representing nobles and trying court, noble cases, and there is no flag that represents the empire or the confederation or the country, then that's sending me that sends a mixed message. But again, it was just a picture, so I'm commenting on a picture. I don't really know the extent of how it is, or maybe it was there in a bigger shot, you know what I mean, whatever, I don't know. But based on what I saw, I only saw these two remnants of state jurisdiction present, which then alters the capacity by which the Moors can be present. Everybody understand? If you're there representing your nation, then you have your nation regalia and flag, not just your nation regalia. If you're there representing your nation that's administering something for a foreign power, then you're there in your habit per se, but doing whatever they need you to do for them. You understand? So that for you, Moors, is what I'm saying about being right, exactly correct. Like it takes time to get to see what's going on, because it could look dope But then like a RBG person will look at that and say, oh, look at them. They working for the police. Because they don't understand government. They don't understand how governments maintain their own communities. In order for you to have your own community got to have its own government. You see what I'm saying? So if your government doesn't function, then your community won't function. That's why they lumped us in with everybody, because they were trying to bury the genetics of us and only bring it out in aspects that could be controlled based upon the mind control over the woman. If these people were in Europe and we were all slaves of them, why would they put us on all of their jewelry? And if Europeans then were white, and the Europeans that were knocking us out of position and we were fighting with were all white like that, then why is it that when we look at Europe at the time that's going on, the people that's being phased out, going from this to this, but they was like this first, the same way it was over here. No, you're not going outside.
No, I thought the thought was on August 3rd.
It's not August 30th. You're going to lay down in a second, all right? Go to the bathroom now. Go to the bathroom now, because you're not going to go when you lay down. No, the same way it is today. There's no specific crown that we all wear, but Moors traditionally wear fezzes and turbans with whatever clothes they may exist in the day. That is what's usually done. And if they don't wear a fez on a turban, they usually wear something with some type of plume feather or reddish hue or something with it. Saying that this is Charles V. But in American books, he's listed as a Negro, painting of a Renaissance Negro. It's a practice of breeding. So when we say European, we talking about people like this.
Mommy! I didn't know you were.
It's bedtime, Amor. Come lay down. You brush your teeth?
No.
And brush your teeth.
This is what I mean. This is what I'm saying. These are Moriscos. Yes, these are their descendants from people like this, from over here and over there. The king wears the cross of the Order of Santiago, which was founded in the 12th century and owes its name to the national patron of Galicia in Spain, Santiago St. James the Greater, under whose banner the Christians began in the 9th century to combat and drive back the Moors and the Muslims from the Iberian Peninsula. But look at who's doing it. Where's the white people? The king. Where's the cross of the Order of Santiago? He's in the front. So look at the king. Look at how black he is. These are not Caucasian people that we dealing with or that we were dealing with up until the late 1700s. The real turnover for us was in the late 1800s, mid to late 1800s. It's like the whole nation got color struck. From bringing the Europeans into the house. Who broke up the Holy Roman Empire? Or who started the breakup? Nah, the Bavarians were the Holy Roman Empire. Who started to break it up? Nope. Napoleon. He was the one. They used him, the bankers used him to basically depose the ancient monarchies, and then that led to the the French Revolution started it, which then popped it off over here, which then set off the Dars. And this became what was known in history as the white suffrage movement. The white suffrage movement being the need to function people or free white people from the bondage, or white women specifically from the bondage of the harems in the old world. Because they was white women being captive all over the world. So what they started to do is use them as sex slaves and spies, like Mata Hari and people like that. So then the idea was then to break down and create, not out of the conquered Moor now, we're going to break down and create a whole nother form of conquered Moor, who we're going to call the Negro or the whatever. You know what I'm saying? Somebody posted this on Facebook that illustrates the point. Yeah, these daughters of the American Revolution were used specifically in that means to control the disorder that was put in white women to perpetually be whores like that, and then use that to the benefit of the system. He getting his hair braided. So we breed 2 nigger males with 2 nigger females. Then we take the nigger males away from them and keep them moving and working. Say one nigger female bears a nigger female and the other bears a nigger male. Both nigger females without being influenced of the nigga male image. Frozen with the independent psychology, they will raise their offspring in reverse positions. The one of the female offspring will teach her to be like herself, independent, negotiable, meaning we negotiate with her through her, meaning the black woman, by her. We negotiate her at will. The one with the nigga male offspring, she being frozen with the subconscious fear for his life, will raise him to be mentally dependent and weak, but physically strong. In other words, body over mind. Now, in a few years, when these two offsprings become fertile for early reproduction, we will mate and breed them and continue the cycle. That is good, sound, and long-range comprehensive planning. Now, we don't know who really wrote this. You understand? We don't know who really. We don't own. Nobody owns any of the pictures and shit that you see that's on Facebook, that you post or I post or anybody posts. Nobody owns them. Once you post it, that's it. Even with the copyright thing at the end, it don't matter. It's still out there. You don't know. So we're talking about a foregone truth that's still going on. That black people have been specifically bred to be submissive based upon that science that we saw in Django of that submissive side of the brain that we all have. That was engendered and endeared that way due to our mothers being the first informants that put us into the system like that. We can't fault them, you know what I'm saying? But at the same time, we also then knowing that can't necessarily expect them to understand where you or anybody else is going with any of this. So the Holy Roman Empire that's running things today is a mirrored backwards version of all of that. And any Moors that and people who help Moors put that energy on emphasis out were all taken out, especially in political office. This is Anton Cermaka. This is his tombstone. They popped him on the steps of one of the Moorish castles in Opalaka out here after he allowed the Prophet to file the 1010-5905 in 28 because he didn't stop the Prophet from doing it. He was a descendant of the Holy Roman Empire, being that he was an Austrian Hungarian Jew, which means that his people descend from people who were owned by Moors, but because they claimed Judaism was raised up and given education by the Moors. So now when the Moor, now he a descendant of that history, the Prophet and him used to dine at the house all the time. So when the Prophet came back with the real deal, they seen what was up. But when he did that, Roosevelt told him specifically not to file it or let it be filed, but he couldn't stop it because it was public record. And so once that happened, they took the Torrance title out of Chicago and then popped this dude because he violated his oath. See what I'm saying? He violated his oath. So, he was only half right. That's why they broke it down the side like that at a 90 degree. See what I'm saying? This is Heru, Washington, one of the first mayors of specifically Chicago to declare Noble Jew Day and all of that. You know what eventually happened to him. And then this was Whitney Moore Young, who was right there with Kennedy. He was the dude who Kennedy was trying to go to figure out how to deal with that class of blacks who knew what was going on and was creating other organizations to deal with the nationality aspect specifically. But, he was playing both sides. So, exactly. And now they both gone. So the three main lines of what they perceive as modern humanity is based on these three strains that came together after the so-called flood, right? So the flood represents a demarcation line or a time in history that everybody agrees happened, but nobody has a documented evidence of that fact other than the watermarks that they see on mountains and the Bible and whatever stories you know or don't know about Atlantis. So all of those coincide with the idea that there is an aspect of history that is not or has not been focused on, that has been specifically taken out, that led to the legends that became history after these great events may or may not have happened. So it says here, Noah lived 350 years after the flood, and Shem 500 years. Due to the date for the flood is 3600 BC. The confusion of the tongues at the Tower of Babel occurred not long after the flood, which is about 250 years. The world population at the time may only have been 2,000 to 10,000 persons. This is what they are putting out. The nations then scattered to the continents and separated during the time of Peleg, about 530 years after the flood. The Ice Age followed the continental division. So what they're saying is that if we do the knowledge to all of these dates, civilization existed prior to the time in which history is recorded. Therefore, nobody can tell you, based upon your position in history, what isn't true based upon what you deduce. The same way nobody can seem to do that. You notice that as soon as people start coming out with all this hidden color stuff and all this explosion of like consciousness in the community with all of these images of black people, putting black people in proper context on Facebook, now they come out with gods of Egypt, Christian Bale as Moses, and then they was gonna come out with the hieroglyph movie. Then it came out with the Jesus movie, the Son of God. Then it came out with Noah, right? All of this is blowback energy that is manifested out of a national identity emerging amongst the people. So out of all of these three lines, which line are we, would you say, most connected to? Exactly. Exactly. So if it started with these three people, after these three people existed, then there came the confusion of the language. See, so the confusion of the language can be construed or can be directly resulted into the division of all of these different nations that came out of these nations. The Phoenicians were called the Archites in the Bible as well. The Haphaimites became the Hashemites. Bram Stoker did from Romania tourism what Walt Disney has done from Florida. It's from an article from this blog. Transylvanian medieval Jakul family is the sole reason many travel to this far eastern European country. Yet I doubt that any of these vampire tourists would know that Vlad III was actually versed in Arabic. That's right, Dracula was an Arabist. In fact, there is evidence to suggest that he might have been a Hafiz ul Quran, which means someone who has memorized the entire Quran. I first came across the phenomenal possibility while on the trail of Romania's lost Islamic past, as I researched the background of the ancient Ottoman mosques in towns like Mangalia, and Constanta along the eastern coast. According to the history books, Vlad's father sends him and his brother Radu to the Ottoman courts of Istanbul, where they lived with Turkish caliphs as part of a hostage agreement, a kind of medieval insurance policy between two powerful states. Remember we talked about that? Once they return home, things get even more interesting. While Vlad develops a now hatred for the Turkish state, that's because a Turk killed his mom, killed his girl. Radu Dracul, upon the death of his father Vlad II, announces that he has converted to Islam and decides to join the Ottomans. So there you have it, the Muslim Dracula, the Moorish Dracula, which explains why we always see Dracula with a red fez. You know what I'm saying? With locks, right? But you know they got him light skin here. But there's a picture of him that's just like this, that's mad dark. They lighten these up. Exactly, and the vampire thing. That was also him joining the Order of the Green Dragon, which was a Templar order that was left over by Crusaders, again Christians, from that region, from that period. So again, as you can see, this is the Egypt of the West because you have the three pyramids of Giza in the front of the picture. And whenever you see images of Ramses or anybody from Kemet, you always see them on the horse, right? And remember what it said about the nigger, male and female. And they're going to work through the female. Here she is, laid out in front of them. Leave it. And then here go the Moors. In the back. All of these is Moors. All these black people. Good night, buddy. Hurt. Not hurt. He's a hurt hurt. Of course. It's cool though. That's nice. Yeah, so once we were or lost the ability to express ourselves in that way, that ability wasn't specifically ordained or put back in our position as that until the brother came and qualified it as what it was. The way that you can tell that we are approaching a reconstructional history or reconstructional era is due to how some of the things that they're doing are being repeated, referring to disarming the post-Reconstruction era. It was the duty of white citizen patrols to search Negro houses and other suspected places for firearms. If they found any firearms, the patrols were to take the offending slave or free black to the nearest justice of the peace, whereupon he would be severely punished. In the scorcher of an opinion that reads like a mixture of Black History lesson and Black Panther Party manifesto. Oh, they're talking. This is Clarence Thomas. Militias such as the Ku Klux Klan, Knights of the White Camellia, the White Brotherhood, the Pale Faces, and the 76 Association spread terror among blacks. The use of firearms for self-defense was often the only way black citizens could protect themselves from mob violence. Again, that's Clarence Thomas. Now, didn't you just see that thing on the news? I think somebody posted on Facebook again, where this white these white people in this town is taking advantage of this law. They all arming themselves on gun day and they walking through the black neighborhoods. Talking about thing on patrol. Y'all heard about that? Yeah, that's fun. That's the 76 association. But the the spirit of 76 is us that has to be exercised. But the 76 Society also represents the Sons of Liberty, which equate to the 33rd and 32nd degree in modern white Freemasonry. You know what I'm saying? So again, any prince of Morocco was any more who at the time was able to hold on to whatever nobility they had and was able to use that to garner a new life in this new post-reconstructional world where most of us now and the things that made us what we were now like the accoutrements of other people. Yeah, the gun day thing. So the aspect of tying all of this together through, again, a national identity, one way to really do that and bond you to the land is to secure that genetic aspect through the genetic code testing and attaching that with the affidavit of identity. You know, attaching that to an affidavit of identity, the same, and running that with a and then getting that notarized, and then running up the flagpole the same way you run up the birth certificate, all the way up to the Secretary of State to get a verification on that. Because now what that does is that puts you in context with the dimensions of your empire, which are, does anybody know? I allude to it in the Dark Scroll 418 because there's a part in it where they talk about the underground tunnels, and the character describes how far and where all the tunnels go. If you look at all those, how it works on the map, it basically busts down to the same dimensions of the empire. So if we agree that that whole idea of walking across the Bering Strait during the winter, during the Ice Age, does anybody know when the Ice Age ended in Europe? Nah, really, it officially ended in the late 1800s. Really, but they call it winter out there. So why is it when we're talking about black history and the trading of people as slaves and all that, how come nobody ever brings into the fact that there was an ice age going on in Europe at the time? And that most of the black people and these people that was there wasn't trying to do all that work outside in the night and all of that. They supervising and making it happen, but essentially they're using the beast of burden to do that. So who were the beasts of burden at the time? That's the serfs. That's the Caucasian slaves. That's imported from Slovenia and all of that through the Moorish pipeline. Also through the Silk Road. See what I'm saying? So when you talk about your dominion or the dominion of Africa, this is this is laid out for us in the Holy Quran, Circle 7, Chapter 47. 747, right? The inhabitants of Africa are the descendants of the ancient Canaanites from the land of Canaan. The old man Cush and his family are the first inhabitants of Africa who came from the land of Canaan. Right? His father Ham and his family were the second. Then came the word Ethiopia, which means the demarcation line of the dominion of Amexem, the first true and divine name of Africa, dividing the land between the Father and the Son. The dominion of Cush, northeast, southeast Africa, northwest, and southwest are his father's dominion, which dominion of Africa. In the later years, many of their brethren from Asia and the Holy Lands joined them. The Moabites from this land of Moab, who received permission from the pharaohs of Egypt from Moors from this area in Brazil, in South Brazil, called Sergipe del Rei, which means of, from, or belonging to King of Egypt.
Stay right here.
Dig. So when we see people like, so when we see images of people like Charlemagne, looking like Rick James, right? And he has this image right here of the shell, the seashell. That's an image of Atlantis. The same way when we see this Assyrian king with the crown on, we know that it's a fez. So this is again showing the national headdress of a people that are all across the planet, functioning on similar social political lines. So again, in the reconstruction of the world into what it is today, we have all basically been sold off to whatever is the nearest nationality for us to be uh, sucked up with. Anybody have any questions? It's evidence of the Moorish Science Temple in Cuba at and before the conference. In Spanish. This became this became Africa per se, and then Asia became this, and then Asia Nur or Asia Far North became what we today know as the Far East. But all of this is Africa. So when we look at the difference between the Axumite calendars and the Asiatic calendars, the way that we tell time and a lot of that is really different. So when we look at Menelik II, Menelik I, we're looking at the direct descendant of Sheba and Solomon. His father being Solomon, his mother being Sheba. Being that his mother and father were direct descendants from that line of Axumitic kings, who function as Moors, because that's affairs. Yet they were functioning in the traditional Christian aspect of the Moorish thing, closer to what the old Eastern Empire was. Back when Ethiopia was like this. Not this little section around the capital. I mean around the like Liabella and all of that. So they say that Moors are not from America and all of that, but then you see the prophet who was born on a Cherokee reservation with these two people, allegedly. One of whom looked just like Harriet Tubman. So our position is to rule again by the 5 points that manifest out of the love, truth, peace, freedom, justice, with the quality being in the center, in the pentagram or the pentagon. That's where in the X-Men movie they had Magneto. They had Magneto locked in the center 100 miles beneath the pentagon, which is the inside of the pentagram, which again represents our flag. Next week we're going to get into the astrological placement of the temple from when it was founded. I have the astrological breakdown of the temple in terms of the chart and how it's laid out, or how it was laid out when it was founded, which can explain why certain things are happening now. Exactly, like Baphomet. The Moors of the Rift were the navigators of the Sharif, were like the navy of the Sharif and armies, and had admiralty jurisdiction over vassal states. So the white was symbolic of that. So this again was adopted by the Ku Klux Klan to be used against us psychologically, which is also why the prophet wore white, because it was a manifestation of the death, because white is a color of death as well. Death to the inferior mind state of the Negro, black and colored. So again, thank you guys for the $25 to duketears@gmail.com. Really appreciate it. And um, the new world. Yeah, even the grave diggers are more. So again, this was called the new world. Thanks for coming through. Thanks for the 25 at duketears@gmail.com. If you have any questions about this, the process, the actual whatever, let me know. houseofveil@hotmail.com. And we'll get up with you guys next week. Islam, everybody.